Well, thank you so much for joining. We are celebrating the UN SDG Week, and my name is Emily Tom, and I'm a program coordinator for Kaya Responsible Travel. And I've been with Kaya for a little over 2 years now, so it's been an interesting couple of years. Our work at Kaya connects people of all ages with socially conscious educational programs tackling issues around the health, the environment, social justice, and economic empowerment. With this, we are very aligned with the UN SDGs, hence the discussion for this week. If you aren't familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, here is a grid of the 17 goals. These were set out in 2015 as a basis for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and has been adopted by the UN world leaders. It has been recognized that sustainable development cannot be achieved without a collaborative effort of these goals as they all blend into one another. But during this webinar, we will be taking a deeper look into goals number 17, partnerships for the goals, number 3, good health and well-being, number 8, decent work and economic growth, number 10, reduced inequalities, and number 13, climate action. Again, most of these that we're going to discuss today will fall into other goals, but we'll focus on these 5 for today. We will look at how international internships can not only be a great career step, but can also contribute towards these meaningful goals. We'll have some sample cases that look at how finding a UN SDG-oriented internship can be done responsibly and what considerations to keep in mind during the search. So with that, let's dive in. So number 17 is partnerships for the goals. The UN believes that these goals can only be realized with strong global partnerships and cooperation. So that's where we all come in. International internships are very popular as they promote cross-cultural communication, cultural competency, and language proficiency, cooperation across borders and sharing of information. For example, learning about climate resiliency on a remote island might provide insight to resiliency at home. And of course, career advancement opportunities. One that isn't always on the forefront of people's minds is progress towards sustainable development. So what should someone consider as they seek out a meaningful and sustainable internship? The first is location. As some of you might know, over half of study abroad students travel to Europe. This has been a pretty consistent trend. This is not a bad thing, but it is limiting the sustainable development opportunities in the remaining areas. Many popular locations suffer from over-tourism or inadequately managed tourism. This is when the needs of the local population and environment are placed as secondary to visitor needs. For responsible international experiences to occur, we must look for locations and experiences that offer a win-win for both the visitor and the local community. We're seeing this a lot in Hawaii at the moment. So we encourage you to break out of the mold. Don't follow the lead of the wanderlust TikToker. And I assure you that you will have much better stories to tell if you seek out sustainable locations. And so we find that interning off the beaten path or outside of Europe is often more sustainable, as there tend to be more options to thoroughly engage in successful sustainable initiatives led by locals. So as you look for an internship, we urge you to ask yourself, will my efforts and dollars make a difference in this location? Can I learn something new and authentically engage with the local community? And is there something unique about this location that is relevant to my career goals, education, or personal goals? The second consideration we would like to address is the provider. So if seeking out an internship using a provider or a company like us at Kaya that offers opportunities around the world, then it is important to think about how the provider will prepare you to thoughtfully and engage and immerse with the community. Will an orientation be provided? Are there homestays or options for locally owned housing? Will they provide adequate context for a meaningful experience? And do they actively support and promote the voice of the communities? And the third is the internship project itself. So I believe all people seeking out an internship are hoping to gain significant knowledge that they can build upon. So how can you have a significant experience while also making an impact for the organization and surrounding community? It is important to make sure that the project you will be working on is a part of a sustainable system and builds capacity for an existing organization. For example, if you're going to do a health internship, it is best to be part of an existing health clinic rather than a pop-up health service that only exists for a couple of weeks before dismantling. Whether it be a marketing internship, engineering internship, psychology internship, etc., how will the project impact the local environment or community? And does it address one of the SDGs? And will you be bringing home new skills and a better understanding of your field? So now let's look at some case studies with specific SDGs. I do want to note that pretty much every major or field of interest can tie back to an SDG if wanting to have a more meaningful internship. And by tackling these SDGs, you're able to gain a broader perspective in your field. So looking at the number 3 SDG, or good health and well-being, some common internships that are sought after are in the areas of public health and nutrition, nursing, medical, occupational therapy and physical therapy, mental health, social work, and sports science. One note, while seeking out an international internship with the number 3 SDG, it is important to only perform work that you would be qualified for back home. So here's an example of an internship with the number 3 SDG. So Nina, she traveled to Ecuador to be part of a local public health initiatives with the indigenous community. Alongside her internship, she was able to take medical Spanish language to provide more context for her work. While she was in Ecuador, she helped build capacity within the organization by working on family planning, nutrition, and addiction workshops. So this is a great example of how additional context, such as the language support and her further research, made for a more responsible and impactful placement for everyone involved. So for the number 8 SDG, or decent work and economic growth, some common internships that are sought after are in the areas of economic empowerment, fair trade, NGO development, entrepreneurship, microfinance, and social enterprise. And again, it is a good idea to ask how your work will be responsible and sustainable for the community. And so here's an example of an internship tackling the number 8 SDG. Jessie worked for a community-led NGO in Vietnam that provides financial services and educational support to local farmers. This thereby promoted economic independence and confidence in their business practices. While there, he complemented his work with Vietnamese cultural workshops and stayed with a homestay for a more immersive experience. This context helped him at the NGO as he carried out his research. Next, we have the number 10 SDG, so reduce inequalities. Some common internships that are sought after here are in the areas of community empowerment, social justice, education, human rights and law, and social work. So here's an example of an internship tackling the number 10 goal. One intern, Sarah, worked in Morocco to help refugees from Southern Africa, usually coming up from Southern Africa, going into Europe, or staying in Morocco. She assisted with educational and social support as the refugees acclimated to their new surroundings. Prior to her internship, she read up on Morocco to have more of an understanding of the refugee issues and engaged in reflection discussions with her local support team. She also took Arabic lessons, one of the 2 main languages spoken in Morocco, to help with her work. And last but not least, for the number 13 SDG, climate action, some common internships that are sought after are in the areas of environmental conservation, wildlife and marine conservation, which also falls into the number 14 and 15 goals, veterinary science, sustainable agriculture, and climate change action, to name a few. So a good example of the number 13 SDG internship is Kiara's in Zimbabwe. Kiara had a biology background and decided she wanted a more hands-on experience with wildlife. With local trained experts, she assisted caring for animals at one of Africa's oldest sanctuaries. In addition to working with animals, she was also assisting with providing educational workshops on environmental conservation in Zimbabwe for local school groups. So again, while she was working, she was learning, but also giving back to the community with the local context. And then if you can't travel or not able to travel, we would also suggest looking into virtual internship options that support sustainable initiatives abroad. And of course, many of the same considerations will still apply. Virtual opportunities are incredible options if you're wanting to do an internship alongside school or a job. And while being a part of a virtual internship, the expertise, project structure, cultural context, and support are still just as important for a successful and meaningful experience. They can also offer unique opportunities. For example, working on an LGBTQ rights initiative in Morocco virtually can actually offer more impact than while in country due to country regulations. So there is a lot to consider when looking for a sustainable and responsible international internship, but no, there are so many opportunities out there. So I hope you learned something today during this short presentation and take these considerations with you as you look for future internship.